Hello, I'm Beth Newberry-Gurney with University of Louisville and Cybers, and we are here today at Kenwood Station to talk to Miss Corey Hatcher, who teaches first grade, about her experience with UFLI Foundations. Can you share your experiences implementing UFLI Foundations in your classroom?
I can. So last year I taught kindergarten, and at the beginning of the year I had done some research on a structured phonics program that we could put in place, and stumbled sort of across in some Facebook groups the UFLI Foundations program, and it was brand new, and so I just went ahead and took a chance and bought the book. I had looked at the online resources and just thought they looked fantastic. It was very structured and looked super systematic and easy to implement. But without the manual, I wasn't quite sure. So I went ahead and bought that on a wing and a prayer that our principal would let us implement it, and she did. So we sort of taught ourselves last year how to put it in place, and loved it and had great results from it. And then this year I moved to first grade, so I've seen now the progression of 2 years of that really sequential, systematic phonics instruction and the benefits that the kids have reaped from that.
Have you been surprised on some of those benefits?
I really have. Not only is their decoding skills better, or are their decoding skills better, but their writing and spelling is just so much better than it has been in the past. It's kind of astounding to see that they can not only spell words, but they understand the rules, the phonics rules that apply to those words. So now they're not just kind of memorizing spelling patterns, but they're learning why those spelling patterns apply.
Wow, yes, That's great. So how is UFLI Foundations different than what you were doing in the past?
In the past, we didn't really have a phonics program, so to speak. We were sort of finding our own resources. We did have sort of a sequence of letters and letter sounds, that we would teach, but I wouldn't say that we had a program to follow. So we were just doing the best that we could, and the results were okay. For a long time, we were integrating phonics in more of a balanced literacy type way, where it was more incidental as you were teaching a guided reading group or a small group, and those kids came to that pattern. You would kind of cover it incidentally, but it wasn't explicitly taught. So this has been so much more in depth with teaching them phonics as an explicit skill. And just teaching them how to decode the words, how to tackle the words sound by sound and spelling pattern by spelling pattern.
Wow. So what tips or guidance would you offer to teachers that are just starting out with UFLI Foundations?
Actually, I brought my kind of raggedy book in here. I've used it so much, but definitely I know you're going to be tempted to get into like those free resources that are online, because they're so good. The slides and the decodables, they're fantastic resources, but read that stuff that's there in the front of the book. It's really important for you to understand how to implement those things in a true way that will make sense to you and will save you some confusion down the road, I think. So read through those first couple of chapters and make sure that you then also read the very last of the book where the assessment stuff is. We didn't know about that because, like I said, last year we were just teaching ourselves how to do it, and so we sort of didn't flip that far. So, and that's a really important part, is doing those assessments, after every couple of spelling patterns. So do the lessons and then find the assessments in the back of the book. They're there for you. All the words are there. So it's really, you can't ask for more from a program than to just be given everything that you need.
Yes. And can you describe any challenges that you faced while implementing UFLI Foundations these past 2 years?
I think that the biggest challenge, and I've talked with my teammates, and we all sort of have said the same thing, is keeping the schedule, keeping the time going. And I know the authors of the program, I'm on some of those Facebook pages with some of the authors, they give those recommended times at the beginning of every lesson. So just maybe turn yourself a timer on. I still struggle, especially with day 2, when you have the connected text that the kids are reading and those decodable passages and the roll and reads. So there's just a lot to squeeze in, especially in that second day. But don't be afraid to stop when your timer goes off, because it is like an interleaved practice. Those skills are going to be covered again. Don't be scared to not do every single word or every single sentence.
Right.
You're going to get back to it again.
And how has UFLI Foundations impacted your students' phonics skills and their overall literacy development?
There's so much more, I feel like this year, and especially because I've seen now them in kindergarten and then the same students again in first grade, they're so much more able to decode words that were unfamiliar to them before. They know that when they see digraphs and trigraphs, vowel teams, that makes one sound instead of trying to sound them out, piece by piece. And they're just tackling bigger words. Even with their writing, like I said earlier, they have so much less. Miss Hatcher, how do I spell this? How do I spell this word? How do I spell this word? They can usually attempt to spell it, and if it's like we've just covered a lot of the vowel teams, and if they don't have the right one, because they're just still challenging at the end of first grade, but they've got one, they have one that makes sense. So and it's just another learning opportunity for us to go back and practice those again. But their overall decoding skills and their writing skills especially have just become so much more developed than they were in the past.
How did you feel implementing an explicit and systematic phonics program that has a script?
It was a little different at first, but like I said, we hadn't had anything like a real phonics program, so it was like the furthest thing from a script was what we started with. But when I took a look at it and sort of dove into it, I'm also doing coincidentally the letters training, or I've just finished it, and I compared it. A coworker and we compared the UFLI lesson with the letters, the lesson plan, the phonics lesson plan, and they mirror each other almost exactly. So if you will follow it, it's exactly what you should be doing to cover all those skills. And it is a bit scripted, but it's not like you don't have it's very interactive with the kids. There's so many opportunities for them to respond. It's not like you were just sitting down and reading from a book to them. So I didn't feel at all like I didn't have any sort of back and forth with them, any engagement with them, because it followed a very clear sequence. So I love it, and I like to have my manual right there next to me, just because there are suggested word chains. That you don't have to think those things up. It's there for you. And even in the manual, if you have like a parent volunteer or an assistant who could also pull a small group, there are extra word chains that are available. So they can pull their whiteboards out or take their letter manipulatives and go do that work with some extra word chains for that skill. So I feel like they've thought of everything, covered all the bases.
Yes, great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about your experiences.
Thank you.
That was perfect.